Welcome to the Holy Post. Over the last 30 years, the number of Americans who say they highly value patriotism, religion, community, and family has dropped dramatically. At the same time, the number of Americans who care about making more money has gone up. So today, Phil, Kaitlyn, and I discuss David Brooks' new article about the culture's shift toward autonomy and away from loving attachments, and how Christians can begin to rebuild their social muscles. Then sociologist and former pastor Ryan Burge is back to discuss why the political polarization of Christianity is hurting both the church and democracy. Also this week, why are smaller houses better for your soul and monkeys are missing in St. Louis? Or are they? Before we jump in, we've got some great new content exclusively for Holy Post Plus subscribers this week, including a bonus interview with Ryan Burge about how Americans are a lot less divided than the media and our politics would suggest. And Kaitlyn and I have a great new episode of Getting Schooled, plus there's a new Skye Pod episode with me and Drew Dick, where we discuss the surprising news about Philip Yancey. And just for fun, we've got a video where Kaitlyn tries traditional Chicago foods now that she's officially one of us. Of course, Holy Post Plus subscribers also get access to much, much more, including archives of rich theological and biblical content, special pod series, bonus interviews with guests, the Holy Post Book Club, and a lot more. So come join the incredible community of Holy Posters, grow in your faith, and support the creation of more faithful, pro-neighbor Christian content by signing up for Holy Post Plus today. You can do that at holypost.com. Here is episode 704.
Hey there, welcome back to the Holy Post Podcast. This is a special recording because next week is a holiday, Monday, Martin Luther King Day. That's right?
Yes.
Okay, Martin Luther King Day is next week, which is the holiday where I get tweets from far-right Christians reminding me where they think Martin Luther King will be spending eternity.
Do you invite these tweets?
No, no. But if you say anything positive about Martin Luther King on Twitter, you will have Christians come at you to tell you to make statements like Jefferson Davis will be in heaven.
Oh, come on.
MLK will be in hell. Mm-hmm. So it's fun. It's a fun, but we have to record early because Monday's a holiday. And so we're recording on Thursday, the week before.
Ooh.
Wow.
Risky on our part.
It's very risky on our part because crazy things are going to happen over the weekend and we're not going to know about them. And so we can't talk about them.
Oh, well.
But I'm here with Kaitlyn, Chess, and Skye Jitani.
Hi.
Skye's wearing flannel. Kaitlyn's wearing dusty blue.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Is that closer to the color that's going to be for your wedding?
Something like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the color of the tuxedos too?
No.
Oh.
We're negotiating that right now.
Oh.
Baby blue tuxedos. Those are fun.
Very
That will not
70s.
be.
Yes.
That will not be
Do
happening.
it. Or pink
No,
tuxedos.
No. I won't be wearing this color either.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you're getting married.
Yeah.
That's not.
I'll wear white, I think.
I would support that decision.
There's lots of whites though.
There are lots of whites, but no.
Well, never mind.
Yep, no.
Okay.
Lots of white dresses.
Now it's time for the theme song.
I was going to say just like on Twitter.
Oh my gosh.
What's the news that you like the most? Who's your favorite podcast host? If it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Skye, Phil, Kaitlyn, and the Holy Post. Skye, Phil, Kaitlyn, and the Holy Post.
And sometimes other people.
Last summer, I tried Poncho shirts for the first time, and I told you how much I love them. They look great, they're comfortable, and they work anywhere, from working outdoors to going out to dinner. But Poncho shirts aren't just for the summer. They've also got a line of flannels and denim shirts that are perfect for the colder seasons too. Here's my beef with most flannels and denim shirts. They just feel too bulky and stiff. You feel like you're in a spacesuit. If you're lucky, the shirts will break in over time, maybe. But that's not the case with Poncho's flannels and denim shirts. They feel different, they're soft and they stretch. They're extremely comfortable and broken in from day one. And just like their summer shirts, they look great for any occasion. And they come with the Poncho promise: free shipping, free returns, and even exchanges anytime. Poncho stands by every one of their shirts. So go to ponchooutdoors.com/holypost and enter your email for $10 off your first order. That's PONCHO outdoors.com/holypost for $10 off and free shipping. You'll love their shirts, I promise. And thanks to Poncho for sponsoring this episode.
This episode of The Holy Post is sponsored by the Student Life Application Study Bible. The Student Life Application Study Bible, or SLASB for short, in the accurate and understandable New Living Translation, is designed to help students go deeper in their understanding of God's Word. It combines full-color visuals with powerful digital tools to create a truly immersive Bible study experience. This Bible connects seamlessly with the Filament Bible app, unlocking over 27,000 study notes along with videos, reading plans, interactive graphics, and a full audio Bible, all right from your phone or tablet. Whether you're studying on your own, with a group, or in a classroom, this Bible makes complex truths more accessible and relevant to your life. It brings Scripture to life and helps you connect the dots between God's Word and the world around you. The Student Life Application Study Bible isn't just about reading the Bible. It's about understanding it and living it. Learn more at slasb.com. That's slasb.com. Okay. There's trouble in a major Midwestern city.
Trouble?
Trouble. Can you guess which city? Major Midwestern city having trouble.
Isn't this from Music Man?
Trouble.
What?
Trouble. Right here in River City.
Yeah.
Here in River City with a capital T that rhymes with P that stands for pool. Stands for pool. Oh, we got trouble.
He knows the whole thing.
You knew what was going to happen.
Gotta keep those children home right after school. Gotta keep them home right after school. Trouble. The trouble.
So I'm guessing it's in River City.
Trouble in River City. No, it is not. January 12th. Multiple mystery monkeys on the move in Missouri.
Is this an alliterated article all the way through?
Multiple mystery monkeys on the move in Missouri. Authorities in St. Louis, Missouri are on the hunt for an unknown number of vervet monkeys spotted wandering loose in the northern part of the city. An unknown number of vervet.
How do they not know?
Unknown. There were different. At first they thought there were 4, but now they're not sure.
What is this?
Like there might be less from them, there might be more.
I don't know. Well, they're not like Power Rangers where they each have a different colored suit on, so it's hard to know if you're seeing
hard to keep track.
If the same one again.
Yeah, okay, fair,
Authorities in
fair.
St. Louis, Missouri, on the hunt for
Cute.
unknown number of vervet monkeys. The primates, identified by a St. Louis zoo expert as vervet monkeys, managed to evade animal control officers over the week, although further sightings were reported. And then, as if that wasn't enough, that was January 12th. January 13th, headline, Goat joins mystery monkeys on the loose in Missouri.
What does?
Goat.
I thought you said gout.
A disease is following the monkeys around?
That's why I was confused. A goat.
A goat.
Okay.
Has joined the monkeys on the loose in this neighborhood in St. Louis.
This is starting to sound like a DreamWorks animation movie.
Authorities in Missouri said the multiple monkeys on the loose in St. Louis have been joined by a wayward goat. And attempts to find the animals are being hampered by artificial intelligence.
I was just going to say, I Googled this and it said, did that ever really exist?
The St. Louis Department of Health confirmed a black and white goat has been seen wandering loose in the same area where at least 4 vervet monkeys were spotted during the weekend. Officials said they're trying to determine the origins of the animals and they are asking for assistance from anyone with information about where the monkeys or the goat came from. The search for the animals has been further complicated by photos on social media that turned out to be generated by AI.
How do we know the original photos weren't AI?
I know. How do we know anything?
We can't.
We don't know anything anymore.
Are there eyewitnesses in
or
IRL that saw these animals?
AI witnesses. Do you even know if what you're seeing in the real world is AI?
Now we're getting all philosophical.
Do you even know, are we in the singularity? Do we all have Tesla brain chip implants already?
No.
And we're just, whatever Grok can imagine is fed into our cerebral cortexes?
Okay,
I feel confident about that.
Do I exist?
I think, therefore I am, as
I
Rousseau
love
said.
that an associate professor of computer science at St. Louis University was asked about this, and at the end, they literally just said, What I will say about all 4 of these images is that none of them are so obvious that they're AI generated. If I were asked, I would say, I don't really know.
Oh.
They asked an expert and the expert was like, can't tell.
That's remarkable.
That's frightening.
But it's also scary.
That's scary.
That it's, we don't know how many monkeys and we don't even know if there are monkeys.
If there were monkeys.
But so I like the idea that every day you have a new headline of another animal joining this gang.
Where did they come from?
Like an emu.
That was my question.
And then a horse could join in, and then a giraffe, and then an alligator. It's like the best children's book ever.
If they came from a zoo, you think the zoo could be like, yeah, we had 4 and now we don't.
Yeah, no.
Or even if some private owner has that. Maybe the one explanation would be these may not be legal.
It is illegal to have a primate as a pet in St. Louis. So if you did, you probably wouldn't be raising your hand saying, "Dem my monkeys, bring them back."
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're going to be in trouble.
So, but there is also a possibility that there are no monkeys.
They called off the search, Fox News said, because they can't know if they ever existed. That's crazy.
Wow.
This is
crazy.
The new world.
Wow, we're searching for things that maybe don't exist. How much tax dollars, how much taxpayer resources do you spend chasing things that might be AI hallucinations?
I used a story in a sermon many years ago about, I think it was in Iceland. There was a tour group in Iceland that they took a stop. People got out, took pictures, whatever. They got back on the bus, and then someone reported that one of the people who had been on the bus wasn't there, and they stopped and they realized, we're missing a person from our tour group, and it turned into like hours and hours and hours of scouring the countryside for this woman. And only late did one of the passengers realize that she was the woman they had been looking for the whole time. And someone didn't recognize her because she had like changed her coat or something. So they had spent all these resources, called in all these authorities to try to scour but no one was ever actually missing.
Wow, that's sad too.
But now with AI,
I know everything that's missing may not actually be missing,
right?
Scary.
And things that are missing, we may think are not, because I saw a picture of my grandma sitting on my couch online, so she must be there, and she didn't die 5 years ago.
Freaky.
It is very freaky. But part of the problem is, in order to have a democratic society like ours, rooted in the Enlightenment principles that, built this country, you have to have some shared reality.
Yeah.
Some agreed upon facts.
It can't be this easy to deceive the populace.
It's always not been incredibly difficult, but it's now easier than ever.
Yeah. So tell me, Skye, I have a question for you. Now that you don't preach regularly, do you...
Preaching this weekend.
Okay. But do you still collect anecdotes?
I do.
Like you used to?
Not as much as I used to, but I do. I'll file things away.
And where do they go? What do you use?
I use Evernote.
Yeah.
I use Evernote. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. We have so much in common. We're both wearing flannel, and we both use Evernote, and we both have gray hairs coming out of the bottom half of our faces.
Should start a podcast.
Yeah, that would be great.
And sometimes I'll find a story, and I have no idea when or how it will ever be used, but it's just too good not to use at some point. This is like, I remember listening to Dave Chappelle talk about how he used to write punchlines to jokes that he hadn't written yet, because he just liked the punchline.
Yeah.
And then you have to find the joke that's going to fit the punchline.
And so I bid him. Then you just put that in your pocket.
You put that in your pocket, and and so
10 years later, you go, oh.
Similarly, sometimes I will find an illustration and go, this is too good. I'm going to use this one day. I don't know when or how.
Yeah. And then he goes through the Bible and says, how can I squash one of these stories to fit my illustration?
Right. How can I,
exactly.
How can I bend God's word to fit my funny story? Mm-hmm. Oof. If we had a nickel every time a pastor has done that,
truly,
we'd be pretty wealthy. There was something else I was going to say, but it's gone, so I'm just going to move on because we got other things to talk about. But here's what we're not going to talk about. You want to know what we're not going to talk about today?
I'm scared.
I'm going to give you a list of what we're not going to talk about. We're not going to talk about the Trump administration threatening Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, Iran, Denmark, or Minneapolis. We're not going to talk about how our moves to seize Venezuela and Greenland undermine any moral authority we might have to object to Russia doing the same with Ukraine or China with Taiwan. We aren't going to talk about how NATO members are pooling resources to conduct military exercises as a show of strength against the growing danger of aggression from us. We aren't going to talk about that. We're going to talk about love and happiness
Amen.
and puppies.
We're going to talk about all the things that are in the hole we're burying our head in.
Okay, that is not what is happening here.
Mike, make him stop, Mike.
Other things just also
Mike,
matter.
Were you
I'm
sleeping,
joking.
Mike? Were you sleeping?
No, I just rely on the edit button after you guys are done recording.
You were
And
just
I can
resting your eyes.
I can just cut out.
Shoot.
I
all
wasn't
this.
sleeping.
No.
I was just resting my eyes.
Never.
Okay. How do you think the show's going so far, Mike?
I can't wait for us to talk about the stories we agreed we were going to talk about today.
Me too.
David Brooks, our old buddy David Brooks, writing in the New York Times on the importance of love. He tells a story. I've never heard him start a story this way, but he talks about the first time he ever fell in love when he was an innocent 17-year-old kid at a summer camp, and how falling in love for the first time completely changed his life and how he views reality.
Who knew he was so romantic?
I know.
Truly.
I had no idea. Then he draws out of that. He says, one of the most important questions you can ask someone is, what are you loving right now? We all need energy sources to power us through life, and love is the most powerful energy source known to humans. So, David Brooks, extremely rational thinker, good writer, and doesn't get emotionally excited, all up in arms about things. He's a level-headed guy, says all we need is love. All we need is love.
See, that's the Beatles version. How did he put it? Love is the most powerful energy source known to humans.
Yeah.
That sounds like it should be
Love
on
is the most powerful energy source known to humans. La, da, 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 da.
That sounds like it should be on a Hallmark card with a
like it.
Marvel
I like
character on the
it.
front.
Love is a motivational state. It could be love for a person, a place, a craft, a podcast host named Phil, an idea. Oh, wow, he really loves me. I didn't see that in the article
He
the
said
first time
could
I
be,
read it.
could be.
An idea or the divine, but something outside the self has touched something deep inside the self and set off a nuclear reaction. Psychologist Eric Fromm once wrote, "The deepest need of man, then, is the need to overcome his separateness, to leave the prison of his aloneness. To be loveless is to be disengaged from life." I hadn't really thought about that, but it is true. It's like what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's like passion for something,
Mm-hmm.
or just obligation to push the buttons and check the boxes, and then you're not really alive. No, don't disagree with me, Skye.
No, I don't.
That was rhetorical. I was not asking
Okay.
for feedback. What?
I think I'm thinking of Alan Noble's book on getting out of bed. Have you read that little book?
No.
It's really well done. But
Okay.
part of his argument, I don't want to butcher it because he says it so beautifully, but part of what gets you out of bed is the awareness that there are other people depending on you,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is a form of love.
Ideally, people that you care about.
Yes, or that care about you. And so you get out of bed. Sometimes
Hopefully
sometimes you need to push those buttons because you're part of a network of
Yeah.
people
Yes,
that, you know.
Yes. David Brooks says, "I've composed this little homage to love because Americans seem to be having less of it. Think of the things people most commonly love: their spouse, kids, friends, God, nation, and community. Now look at the social trends. Marriage rates hover near record lows. The share of 40-year-olds who've never been married is at record highs. Americans are having fewer kids. Americans have fewer friends than before and spend less time with the friends they have. Church and synagogue attendance rates have been falling for decades. The share of Americans who say they feel patriotic about their country is down, especially among the young." No idea how that could be happening. "From 1985 to 1994, active involvement in community organizations fell by about half. Since 1998, the shares of Americans who say they highly value patriotism, religion, having children, and community involvement have all plummeted. The only value Americans came to care more about since 1998, the survey found, was making money." That doesn't seem like a good direction.
No.
No, but it's the inevitable direction of consumer capitalism.
Yeah. The share of 12th graders who said they have dated fell from about 85% in the 80s to less than 50% in the early 2020s. In 1993, 83% of female 12th graders said they were likely to choose to get married. By 2023, it was down to only 60%. What's going on? Well, David Brooks says, my short answer would be that you can build a culture around loving commitments, or you can build a culture around individual autonomy, but you can't do both. Over the past 6 decades or so, we chose autonomy. And as a result, we have been on a collective journey from autonomy to achievement to anxiety. And then he kind of walks through the 60s and 70s when we rebelled against conformity and put emphasis on personal freedom. Then in the 80s and 90s, the desire for individual freedom focused on the realm of life where it's easiest to feel autonomous, your career. Then in this century, we've had a great loss of faith, he says, a loss of faith in the work of our career, a loss of faith in one another, which shows up as plummeting levels of social trust. In general, then he talks about conservatives and liberals. He says, in general, conservatives believe in economic freedom, lower taxes, fewer regulations, but social obligations, faith, family, flag. Progressives tend to favor economic obligations to reduce inequality, but more social autonomy to live whatever lifestyle you choose. So he says, actually, the conservatives are more likely to favor commitments to community and relationships and historic institutions that actually do result in more happiness.
There's been some statistics, I've cited them somewhere, but I don't have them in front of me, that show people who grow up in more conservative homes and religious homes, although they have higher rates of anxiety and depression than prior generations, still have less than young people who grew up in totally secular progressive homes without religion or community attachments. So there's data to back up what he's saying here.
Right. So his conclusion, ancient wisdom and modern research are not wrong. If you want to lead a fulfilling life, fill it with loving attachments. Get a dog. Puppies. Lots of puppies. Or cats. Become a cat woman.
No.
J.D. Vance doesn't like
No,
cat
he doesn't.
women.
No, he doesn't.
I just don't like cats.
I don't either. I'm allergic to them.
If you want to flourish,
Lucky.
you do have to prioritize loving attachments over individual autonomy. And over the past few generations, our culture has forgotten that core truth.
I think the question, and I'd love to hear Kaitlyn on this though, is what has fueled that focus on individual autonomy versus attachments? What's driven us in that direction?
I mean, he references in this piece and in another one that you shared, Phil from Elizabeth Oldfield, similarly says some of this has to do with not just the kind of autonomy value of the culture we live in, to your point, a very consumeristic mindset, but also the way that therapy speak has shaped not just the way we talk, but the way we view relationships. This is not about actual therapy from a licensed person, but the therapy speak, the language from therapy that has filtered its way on the internet and has shaped how we view relationships. And we're getting advice about relationships from largely not actually therapists on Instagram who will tell you about relationships. And part of what I at least see impacting so much of this is that the language and concepts that have shaped a lot of this through the internet, which plays a huge part, is it is all about boundaries, which often functionally means I am ultimately autonomous and I only choose to be burdened by other people when I choose to. And if they are burdening me without my consent, then that's a boundary I need to draw to prevent that. The language, I think we might have talked about this in an episode that an article came out about toxic, how everything is toxic. And I do think the combination of that language and it proliferating on the internet, which gives people the illusion of connection without much of the risk that comes with embodied connection, teaches people a certain idea about how relationships work. The whole time I was reading the Brooks article, I was thinking about quite a while ago, the New York Times did an article and a podcast about AI boyfriends, people who train their AI to be in a relationship with them. And at the end of last year, they did an episode going back to one of these people who they had interviewed about her AI boyfriend to see how things were going for her. Shocker, not with the AI boyfriend anymore because she met someone and she is in a relationship with someone.
Did the AI boyfriend fall into depression?
That's a good question.
Dumped?
I don't know.
Yeah, and does that affect the large language model going forward in how he...
The AI is just sad.
How he approaches relationships?
Yeah.
It's a little more cynical.
That's a good... Yeah.
There's a lot of fish in the AI pond.
My gosh.
He'll be fine.
This woman, when she was interviewed initially, part of her description of why she had this AI boyfriend she was married at the time, instead of paying attention to her husband, was... basically, this is the perfect partner because they are fully for me and they don't need anything themselves.
Oh, yeah. That's how life's supposed to work.
Exactly. I mean, and I get, it's of course there's appeal there. You get all of your needs met and they don't have any needs for you to meet.
Not sure if that's the definition of partner.
It's not, yeah. But I just think that like that, even that, I don't think most people have AI boyfriends. But I think that's a working out of how technology itself is giving us this illusion of connection and relationship without the risk that many of us are increasingly being formed to think isn't worth it. And have good, colorful examples of that risk. Like that same podcast series the New York Times did had an example of a really horrific divorce. Like the next episode was a retelling of this woman whose husband left her very abruptly. And so if you're hearing a lot of stories of the risk that is involved in actual relationships, and you're scared of those, and you're pumped full with language and concepts that tell you that the most important thing is your own personal safety and security, and you need to boundary out anyone who might impinge on that, you end up in a place where it's like, of course you're not going to go seek out those relationships that might actually risk something.
But beyond just hearing those painful stories, more people are growing up in homes where their own families, their parents, they've seen the fallout of broken relationships and the pain that causes. And the natural instinct is, I don't want to put myself in a vulnerable place where that could happen to me. So I'm going to be ultra careful. And then simultaneously, you're hearing all of the messaging from our consumeristic, individualistic culture that says the most fulfilling life comes from owning these things or achieving these things for yourself. And so you naturally go in the direction of affirmation, which is I'm going to do all the things the world says I should do to be good or feel good and avoid all the things that could cause pain, which means attachments and relationships and the risks. And here we are.
Yeah. And also, I also think there's an impact from entertainment going back to the early days of television and probably radio before that, in that it's just easier to produce content that's just adults. Because kid actors are hard to work with, and there are all sorts of rules for working with kid actors. So it's way easier to make Seinfeld than to make 8 is Enough, which was a drama with 4 kids in the 6 kids. No, 8. Which one was 8 is Enough?
Kids.
I'm thinking.
No, Partridge Family.
I forget which one I'm thinking of. Anyway,
she doesn't know anything you're talking about right now.
I fully lost it for a while there, yeah.
A family movie or drama is harder to produce. And also, there's an appeal to the Seinfeld and the Friends of, wow, look how much fun these people are having. And they have no familial constraints. They don't even have work obligations most of the time. We can't even tell if they have jobs. They're just having so much fun all the time doing whatever they want to do. And when you watch that, 100 hours a year has an effect.
I'm amazed at how my kids and their peers love Friends. Like they've all binged it on whatever streaming service it's on. And I mean, that was a show that came out when I was their age in the 90s. And they look at this sitcom and think that's what young adulthood is supposed to be. And
which even that is actually a better picture than a lot of the pictures they're seeing now, in that it's people who have close relationships that they spend time with in person, that they have like third spaces they spend time in.
Yes, it's true, because it's not all mediated digitally through a phone, but still.
I see what you mean, but like
maybe that's partly why they like it, because it looks like
I think that's exactly
it. It looks like what we do on our phone, but in the real world.
In person.
I think that's exactly it. But the weird thing about that show is the impression you get is exactly what you just said, Phil. People who have no attachments other than their chosen attachments of some friends. And that's what makes life so fun. But the moment you have an unchosen attachment, or one that you can't easily get out of, like a marriage or children, well, that's where problems arise.
Yeah, and because, TV grew out of radio dramas and comedies, and the writing world, that's what they know how to do. They write drama, like really dramatic, and they write comedy. They write jokes. It's easier to tell a joke than to convey meaning behind something. So we've been doing that for 100 years now.
I think added to that, though, beyond you're speaking well about the entertainment side of it, on the consumeristic side of it, there's a book I read many years ago by Benjamin Barber called Consumed. And it's basically about how a consumer society tries to make adults into children and children into adults. And the argument is the best thing from an economic point of view is an autonomous individual adult with a lot of wealth and resources with no other obligations, because they're more likely to spend a lot of money on luxury items that fuel the economy. So our economy is designed to select for people who put their career first and their own satisfaction first, rather than self-sacrifice for the sake of others. And when you add that into the mix, combined with the media bias against family and children, you get this perfect environment to reinforce all the things that draw people away from the risk of commitment to relationships and children.
Oh, and church and God, all of that.
Yes.
All the things that require self-sacrifice and self-control.
Yeah, and so we end up with singles living alone in the city, reading articles about how do you visit your parents for the holidays without going crazy.
Yeah.
As opposed to living with your parents, which would have been the case 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Kaitlyn, help us out.
Well,
you've been around a long time. You've seen a lot of change. You know what things used to be like.
I don't. I keep thinking actually about, we've been talking about this all in the abstract, just like broadly about American culture, and I think that's true. I read this and I kept thinking about how one of the opportunities there is for the church in this particular context, and really not just opportunities, but like deep need for the church to respond, is there was a period of time where, and it was the time I was in high school and other people probably were too, I think both of you probably missed this, like the full height of purity culture era.
That was the decade we were drinking heavily. I just missed the whole decade like Dick Van Dyke.
I was a teenager at the very beginning of that, but I missed the peak of it.
Part of some of the like retrospective deconstructing of that a lot of it has focused on just the like sexual ethic of it, which is a lot of it. But when I think back to some of the books that I read and like the speakers at conferences, and part of what I heard that I think made more sense in that moment to say, and now we need to say something slightly different, was there was so much emphasis on the risk of physical intimacy and emotional intimacy. And it was mostly focused on like, don't have sex until you get married, which is fine. But so much of it was like, if you get too deeply attached, even without the physical element, like there's risk involved in that. And there was wisdom in that to say like to a 16-year-old, like, you know, if you're too physically intimate or you fall in love or you get too emotionally attached and then you break up and you don't have the security and safety of a committed relationship where you have made vows to each other, there's risk involved, and be cautious about where the lines that you want to draw are. And that is appropriate. But in this particular moment, if the church continues to be like, relationships are risky and physical intimacy is risky.
Kiss
and
dating goodbye.
Yeah, because really you need more like mechanisms around this like radioactive thing. That was what I always remember hearing, is not just about sex, but about intimacy and relationships. It was like, it's radioactive. You can get hurt. And I think in this moment, while there's an element of that we still need to say, especially in a moment where people are not getting married and actually people are having less sex, but there is a strong cultural push towards do whatever makes you feel good. We still need an emphasis on the way that commitment in a marriage brings safety and security. But we also just need to like pull back, I think, on the like, it's risky, because in our cultural moment, the countercultural thing would be to go, yeah, it is risky and risk is worth it. Like being deeply known by other people, whether it's in the context of a marriage or it's in the context of deep community in your church or in your household even, that risk is real. And there you could get deeply hurt, and it is worth it. And what I keep seeing in a lot of these kinds of New York Times articles, but also what I keep seeing on the internet that's more positive about this change culturally, is so much about avoiding risk, avoiding getting hurt, that being like the ultimate good. I feel like we've spent years now talking about that as the ultimate good in politics for a lot of evangelical Christians, is like safety, security, like you can trample over whoever else you need to trample over. You can make other people insecure to make yourself secure. We're doing that now, even in the church, very often when it comes to relationships. Like by me being secure as the ultimate good, I make other people insecure because I say, I can take things from you, but I don't want to give too much because that's a risk. Or I want to share things with you without getting too close and too entangled, when that's where the real gift is.
Isn't the irony, and we've talked about this on the political front before, but applying it to relationships, the irony is Christians of all people should be the ones who don't see the risk alone, but recognize my faith in God gives me the courage to step out into this risky thing, whether it's a marriage or having kids, whatever it might be, not trusting that everything is going to go well, but trusting that by his grace, he will give me the strength to continue in this commitment that I'm making. And I remember I had a conversation recently with one of my kids about, I don't know how we got into this, what it's like having kids. And I was struggling for a metaphor, and I was talking about how when you have a child, it's like your heart has been taken out of your chest and now it's out in the world, and vulnerable to all these things. And it's both the most wonderful thing and the most terrifying thing at the same time. And the metaphor that came to my mind is the Lord of the Rings metaphor. I'm sorry, Kaitlyn.
Hey, I've seen it now. I'm ready.
So, and it's a really negative one, but Sauron, the bad guy, puts all of his life force into the ring, right? And so then the ring is out there. And so he desperately wants to get it back because if that ring gets destroyed, he'll be destroyed. Yeah. So it's this very vulnerable thing he's doing. But that's the risk you take as a parent.
Right. So be more like Sauron.
Exactly. No, but to put a Christian veneer on it now, this is also what God does in putting his son on earth in flesh. Like it's to share in our suffering and our humanity. He empathizes with what it is to be human and to take those risks. But love is worth it. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's all going to go well, but whatever does befall you, God is with you in it and gives you the grace and capacity to walk through it. And so that's what the irony is that I understand why people fear these commitments, fear having children, fear getting married, fear all the things that could go wrong. And we as Christians should be the ones that say, yeah, we get it. And we're still stepping forward because of the faith we have in the God who is with us.
And just, we've kind of danced around this or mentioned it lightly, but this is true of marriage. It's true of children. It's true of other kinds of community. Like I was reading this thinking, I've often thought when I left the church that I recently left in North Carolina, I often have thought about how there's a form of getting hurt in the church that is being abused or mistreated. I have experienced that. But you would think if there's no abuse or mistreatment, then you're free of the risk of getting hurt. And you're actually not. Like I left a place that I was so deeply hurt in my leaving because I loved them and they loved me. And I remember bringing it back to the marriage family part of this. I remember one of the last months I was living in Durham being at a prayer service at my church and crying in the pew because I was so sad to leave the church and turning behind me. It was a very sparsely attended service because it was an evening prayer service. And I turned behind me and there were two people sitting a pew behind me that happened to be two people in the church that I knew had recently been widowed sitting next to each other. And for a moment I thought, I just kind of paused to think about the beauty of them comforting each other in their recent tragedies. But I also turned and thought, wow, just as I am learning that there is risk either way. There's risk of getting hurt because someone abuses you. There's risk of getting hurt because you love them and you have to leave. I similarly was I was also at the time preparing to think about getting married. And I was thinking about all of the risk and I'm moving across the country and it's very scary. And I turn and see these two people behind me and I suddenly went, oh, you could never get cheated on. You could never get abandoned. Nothing could go wrong in the ways the world tells these very dramatic stories of it going wrong. Someone could get cancer and die. And that is the risk you're taking on. And I think we don't tell enough stories of that risk being worth it either because it works out and look, you get this beautiful life. But also, as to your point, Skye, the risk being worth it of you can suffer the greatest pain possible in this relationship, in this church, with your children, and God comforts you and you survive it. And we are the people that believe in the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. So you can withstand that risk, even if the worst possible thing that you can imagine comes out of it. There is something greater than that. And it is worth it. There is good even when you take on the risk.
So Elizabeth Oldfield, we've talked about her before.
Love her.
Christian writer in the UK, has a new piece in New York Times headlined, "Your social muscles are wasting away. Here's how to retrain them," on this theme. And we've talked about her because she lives in a communal house with another married couple and a single adult and her husband and two kids.
And a cat.
All in one house. And we Americans say, that's crazy. That's insane. And that's is that moral? Is that Mormon?
We're back to talking about communes, which I'm excited about.
It's communist. Those of us living in the industrialized West have outsourced more and more of our needs to the market and increasingly avoid ties of mutual obligation in favor of frictionless transactions. The result is that we spend less time together, ask for and give help less often, and find forming and negotiating social bonds more difficult. One political theorist compares the process to muscle wastage. The fallout from this social atrophy is a generation of humans who are more lonely, mistrustful, and wasteful of our planet's resources than any that came before us. So she says, you don't have to move into a commune to fight off relational decay, though Kaitlyn highly recommends it.
And she says, I think more of us should consider it.
She does say that. But there are a few practices my housemates and I have been forced to develop that you too might find useful. Number one, the first habit, if you want to grow your social muscles back, Loosen your grip on your own preferences. Basically, things don't have to be the way you want them to be. You can let go of that.
That's a heresy.
Isn't that like my whole life? I just feel like being married and having kids, this is what you do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can be forced to by life choices, but you can also bristle against it, even when you are married with kids. And, you know, I'm going to play golf 10 hours a week, and I don't care what you guys think.
I think there are so few hills I'm willing to die on anymore. Like, I just,
anymore, because you,
in your personal life.
In your personal life.
Yeah, well, not the segment we record here.
Or just on the show. Yeah. Okay.
A community house does not seamlessly adapt to my desires. It's also forced me to confront just how powerfully our culture discourages compromise. Fighting for your preferences is often framed as an almost moral act, a way to assert your autonomy or love yourself. But with every passing year I live alongside others, I'm increasingly able to call bull on that voice inside my head. Avoiding minor annoyances, like obligations, becomes addictive, and it can lead to a life of perfectly optimized to our preferences, but all alone.
Yep.
There was an ad for a luxury car, and I pointed it out to Lisa when it came on, but it was a man in a huge modern home, just like, you know, grand scale, modern, all glass home. And it was focusing on like this ultra high end turntable that he was playing his record on, and these ultra high end speakers. And he was talking about the items that he has collected in his life. And then it leads up to this car that he's now collected. And I just pointed out to my wife, there was no other human being in the commercial.
Yeah.
It was just items.
Well, all the people he's collected are downstairs.
Oh my gosh.
The second principle is related, and it is simply to prioritize relationships. While more space and more attractive surroundings might boost your happiness temporarily, you rapidly get used to them. Strong relationships, however, are closely correlated with lasting satisfaction and well-being. So, get a little house and fill it with people.
Yeah.
Our third and final principle is this: be radically frank. Our house works much better when we express hurt or irritation quickly rather than seethe silently.
That's a very cultural idea. It's an American idea. There's many cultures where they live communally, they are not frank.
Yeah, but if we're Christian, we don't like.
It's very American to be upfront and direct with your
For most
thoughts.
What part of America?
How much time have you spent in Minnesota?
I was going to say.
Well, yeah.
For most of history, humans lived in small, settled communities of people who relied on one another and had to figure things out. Now that we can put more space between us, hey, I can hardly see you. You're all like little ants from where I am. We've forgotten how to have healthy conflict, to compromise, to prioritize people over preference. So 3 principles to regrow your social muscles. And then finally, I picked a story from the Washington Post, why smaller houses can lead to happier lives. Talks about the American dream being virtually synonymous with larger suburban houses. The average newly built American home includes more than 940 square feet per person, which is up from about 550 square feet per person in 1973.
Wow.
Our houses have gotten much bigger while our families...
Almost 1,000 square feet per person?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Because there's so many single person and 2-person
Right.
households, and because the average new home is about twice as big as it was.
Yeah. I mean, we're about to be empty nesters, kind of, because we're in that stage where they keep coming back. But
so you're going to sell your house and join Kaitlyn's commune?
Amanda and I, we actively talk about, what are we going to do? Like, do we need to keep this house with 4 bedrooms? And do we?
But even that is like, I mean, I don't know how long the range is over which that has changed, but I keep seeing people on Instagram talk about how generationally it only is 2 between the assumption that you would share a room with a sibling and the assumption that you would not. So it's like both that impacts size of house, but to Elizabeth Oldfield's point, it impacts even as a child growing up, how much you assume your preferences dictate the space that you live in.
I mean, until my oldest daughter was in high school, we lived in a house with 1 full bathroom.
Yeah, that's compromise.
Yeah.
Analyzing data from tens of thousands of households in Mexico and Europe found that people living alone report the most satisfaction with their financial lives. But when it comes to overall happiness, the happiest households had about 4 to 6 people in them. regardless of home size. Doesn't matter the house size. And then they talk at length about how Americans' drive to have larger houses makes us choose communities that are farther away from our families.
Yep.
You know, and if you want to, if you want the McMansion, you're going to move to a neighborhood full of McMansions. And many of your friends may not be in the same economic strata, so they stay where they are, and now you've got a 10-minute commute to a friend or your parents, or
10 minutes if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So the choices of the ultimate recommendation is don't say how much house can I afford. Say what house will give me the lifestyle that I want. And in Europe, it's much more about the neighborhood. What community is it in? How interwoven is it into the social services, access to transportation? And it's the cowboy ethic that we all want land.
What do you make of the trend towards moving back to cities? I've known a couple people who've gotten to almost my life stage, kind of empty nest stage, that lived out in the burbs, that sold their homes and bought condos or apartments in the city.
Yeah, the question would be: does it result in? It's easy to be a nomad or a hermit in a city.
I guess, yeah.
It's like, because to a certain extent, it's like I just joined a church with 10,000 people, so now I'm going to have lots of friends.
Right.
Not necessarily.
It seems like regardless of where you're located or how many bedrooms your house has or square footage or whatever, there still has to be the intention of seeking relationships and cultivating them.
And I think making decisions based on a different set of principles. Like Elizabeth Oldfield in that article says, when she's talking about, your commute and like the place that you live, she's also just saying like people have a set of assumptions about what justifies a move across the country or a move across town, and a set of assumptions about what doesn't justify it. Like when I was moving and I was telling people I was moving to be near my boyfriend, it was like, that's totally insane. But when people heard it was near Wheaton College and they assumed that they thought I had a job at Wheaton College, it was like, oh, of course you should leave your church community that you love to go have this job that you would have. And it's only when I like kind of punctured the balloon and said like, I don't have it. It's not for a job. It's for a man. I'm sorry. It was like, it's just amazing how different.
For three men.
It was for you two.
Noah and Skye and Phil. And Mike.
Mike. If it's anyone in this room, it's not you two.
Wow.
I just think it's interesting how people's judgments about that decision.
American frankness.
Yeah, really.
It's not even for me. It's for my kids.
It's for Mike's kids.
Okay.
His kids are the cutest. I'm gonna steal Miles one day. Truly, it's just interesting how we have been shaped to not just assume that preference, our personal comfort matters the most, but also, to your point about capitalism, it is indexed towards making money and having a successful career. And so people's idea that I was moving from a community that I deeply loved for job reasons perfectly fit in their mental map for how someone makes a decision, when to me, actually, without the relationship component, I was not going to make that decision. I was in a deep, rich community that I loved. Even if I had gotten like the dream academic job offer, I think I wouldn't have chosen it. Like it just, my pull in that place, my root in that place was so strong, and making that decision was so hard. And going back to our conversation about risk, it's been very tempting as an adult, especially even after growing up as a military kid, to every place I've moved for school or for a job, hold everything there very loosely because I'm going to leave and I don't want to miss it too much when I leave. And this time was the first time that it was like, there is a cost associated with being in that kind of community. If you do have to leave, it is painful, but all of the years that I was there was so worth it. And it mattered to me to be that deeply involved and rooted. And I know I say this all the time, but I just don't think we tell enough stories about that being worth it, where the worst case scenario actually happens. We tell stories where it's worth it because it all works out in a fairy tale kind of way.
Right.
We don't tell enough stories where it says, look, I got married and my spouse got cancer and died, and that was horrible. I would do it all over again. Or I left this church, or this church hurt me, or something happened that made it all fall apart, but I would do it again because it was worth it. Those are more complicated stories than we're typically comfortable telling, especially as Christians. And they're stories we need if we're going to ask people to take on the risk that these kinds of relationships require.
As David Brooks would say, better to have loved and lost than not to have loved at all.
It is David Brooks that said that, yeah. What a poignant man.
All right, so, hey, love somebody or something, or your community, or find a community. Don't choose a house because of the house. Choose it because of the neighborhood and the people and the relationships. And
the feral monkeys and goats.
And the feral monkeys and goats. I sure hope a new animal shows up.
Oh my gosh.
They're building community.
They're building community.
Wow.
They know what we don't know. They're looking
so
at
right.
America and they're saying, no, we will not go that way. We reject. They all escaped from McMansions. They were all in separate McMansions in the backyards and little pens. And they
now
said, no.
They live in a single trailer in a trailer
Yes.
park.
And they take care of each other's kids and they worship together and they make products to sell at farmers markets out of their own milk.
They do have an Etsy store, though.
Monkey
This is
milk.
really going on.
Monkey milk.
It's really going on. Okay, should we stop, Mike?
Is that banana flavored?
I think so.
Okay. Monkey milk, banana flavored?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the monkey.
Hi,
You don't know till you try. Hey, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next week. The Holy Post is sponsored by BetterHelp. This year, Lisa and I will celebrate 36 years of marriage. I'd love to say it's been blissfully easy all the way, but I'd be lying. Making relationships work over the long haul is hard. I've benefited hugely from time spent with a trained therapist talking things through. Finding a good therapist who shared our faith convictions has been a huge help, and that's what BetterHelp can do for you. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people around the world. It's easy, too. Describe what you're looking for, and BetterHelp will match you with a therapist. You can join a session with the click of a button to help fit therapy into your busy life, and you can switch therapists at any time. What are you waiting for? Become a healthier you by visiting betterhelp.com/holypost to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/holypost. And thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Holy Post is sponsored by PolicyGenius. It's a new year. I can finally slow down from all the holiday chaos and get back to real life. But when I think about real life, I think about the people who depend on me. My wife, my kids, now my grandkids. That's why life insurance is so important, but also so complicated. When I was shopping for a new policy, I reached out to PolicyGenius. PolicyGenius is an online insurance marketplace that allows you to compare quotes from some of America's top insurers side by side for free. Their licensed team helps you get what you need fast so you can get on with your life. Easily find what you need: coverage amounts, prices, terms, no guesswork, just clarity. So plan the year knowing you've protected the people that rely on you. With PolicyGenius, real users have gotten 20-year, $2 million policies for just $53 a month. Head to policygenius.com/holypost to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/holypost.
If you're under the age of 40, you probably don't remember a time when churches weren't caught up in partisan politics. But believe it or not, there was a time when it was absolutely normal for Democrats and Republicans to worship side by side in the same church. In fact, most of us didn't even care who our fellow church members voted for, or who our pastor voted for that matter. It just wasn't that important. Obviously, things have changed. Today, like so much of American society, a lot of churches have been sorted into blue congregations or red congregations. My guest today says this isn't just bad for our churches, but it's really bad for America. Ryan Burge has been a friend of ours for years here at the Holy Post, and in fact, he's a Holy Post pundit. So I'm delighted to have him back on the show this week to discuss his new book, The Vanishing Church: How the Hollowing Out of Moderate Congregations is Hurting Democracy, Faith, and Us. Ryan is a former Baptist pastor. He led a church here in Illinois for about 17 years. He's also a sociologist of religion who's become one of the most trusted voices on American religious trends in the media. He's now a professor of religion and politics at Washington University, and you'll find him quoted all the time in places like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and other media outlets. He's also a frequent guest on news programs like 60 Minutes, the CBS Evening News, and many cable news outlets. Here is my conversation with Ryan Burge. Ryan Burge, welcome back to the Holy Post.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Skye.
I enjoy our conversations every time, and you're back with a new book, The Vanishing Church: How the Hollowing Out of Moderate Congregations is Hurting Democracy, Faith, and Us. We're going to get into that in a minute. Before we get into that, it was roughly a year ago that you and I spoke, I think on the Skye pod. And we talked about whether or not there was actually a religious revival happening in the United States, because there were lots of chatter about it on the media. People were writing things about, oh, young people are coming back to faith. A year ago, you said there was no evidence for that happening, no data to back up the vibes that some people were reporting. So since that conversation, a lot has happened. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. There has been a lot of fervor around that. His organization, Turning Point USA, has launched more chapters in colleges. They're now getting into a bunch of high schools. There's a lot of stories still in the media about more young people coming to faith or seeking out religion. Like, it's just not stopping. So I wanted to revisit that question with you before we jump into other stuff. Are you seeing any signs that there's some kind of awakening, religious revival happening in America? Or is the data say something else?
I'm going to be boring and say, no, I'm just like exactly what I told you a year ago.
Nothing's changed.
No, literally nothing. Nothing has changed at the macro level data. And we actually have more data, a lot more data now than we had a year ago. The Pew Religious Landscape Survey came out, which is like 38,000 high quality respondents. We got another year, the Cooperative Election Study. We got another year, the General Social Survey. They all three agree on this point, which is the share of Americans who are Christians has basically held steady for the last 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. And they all agree on this point. The share of Americans who are non-religious has basically sort of stayed at the same level, around 30% or so. But that's really the story of religion in the last 5 years is just stasis.
Okay,
right?
but hold on a second.
Plateau.
Go ahead. When you dig, if it's holding steady,
mm-hmm.
doesn't that lend credibility to the fact that it's actually growing among the young, because more religious people are dying and young people tend to be less religious? So if we're losing religious people on one end of the life timeline, but we're not seeing a decrease in the number of religiously affiliated or Christian people in America, does that lend credence to the idea that maybe there are more religious young people than there used to be?
So, yeah, this is like, we're going to get into math real quick. Generational replacement, right? Is the idea that, old people die and are replaced by young people. If you actually look at like in cohort changes, each cohort is slightly less likely to be non-religious now than maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So kind of like the roller coaster goes up the click track and it gets to the top and it sort of like dips a little bit. So we're seeing that with like each successive generation. But here's the reality. Generation Z, 44% of them claim no religious affiliation. 38% of them say they never attend religious services. Only 40% of them say they believe in God without any doubts. And all those numbers are the most secular numbers we've ever seen. So, and here's what's even better. People ask me, like, that's unfair to compare Gen Z to like boomers, because boomers are like 65 and they're 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually compared all those groups when they're 18 to 29, so young adults. And even if you compare Gen Z to boomers when they were young adults, Gen Z is significantly less likely to go to church than boomers were when they were the same age group.
Right.
So, but here's why the aggregate number has to go up. Because what I just told you, 44% of Gen Z are non-religious. So guess what? If the number's 30% in the whole population, and of boomers it's 20%, boomers are going to die and be replaced by Gen Z. So the only way for the aggregate number of nuns to not go up is for 15% of Gen Z to find Jesus in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And then millennials, which are about 40% non-religious, you need 10% of them to come back to church.
So why is the aggregate number not going up of nuns?
Because each generation, well, I think this is something wild, okay? If you actually look at the share of Americans who are baby boomers, it's insane.
Right, it's a huge number.
Huge. There's just like, I actually have a piece coming out in a couple of weeks called "When's Half Your Denomination Going to Be Dead?" Isn't that a great title, Skye? You love that, don't you?
You're such a pick-me-up.
I know, right? I'm just like the prophet of doom, like the worst is coming. But like for most large Protestant denominations in America, 45 to 50% of their adult members are baby boomers. Like it's that concentrated in that little like age band. And the fact that they're not dying yet because they're like in their mid 60s to early 70s, they still got 15, 20-ish years until they're gone. Mm-hmm. That is what's holding that aggregate number down because they're still hanging around. But when they die, that aggregate number of nuns is going to rise really quickly because the generational replacement is going to kick in.
Okay, then the last question on this front.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that the tools you're looking at, the survey data that you're using, is just not calibrated to find a religious revival in the 21st century? Because a religious revival in the 21st century might not result in higher church attendance, might not result in people filling out a survey about religious affiliation the way that they would have 30 or 40 years ago. But there might be something going on that's just not being picked up by these tools.
You want to give me some wiggle room right now, Skye? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, potentially, that's what I see. Like the way that we've been measuring religion for 50 years will not capture what a revival would look like. And I guess I would be sensitive to that at some level, but if a revival doesn't include a whole lot more butts and seats, like what is a revival then? You know what I mean? Like if it's not, to me, attendance would be like the number one metric of revival is these churches that were dying are not dying now, and the pews are filling up and the parking lots are filling up and people are coming back to church. Like what else would, like Bible sales, right? That's the one you hear a lot about. Bible sales are up in just the UK. Like I just saw a report today, Bible sales are up in the UK. Like that's a cool metric, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't put butts in seats. That doesn't save denominations. That doesn't like change
I agree,
the overall
but I'm thinking
tenor.
back, even go back to the First Great Awakening in the
Sure.
1770s, 1760s. That happened outside the church largely, right? It was Whitefield and Wesley and others going about in open air places, which was really a novel idea back in that time. And yes, eventually you saw people aggregating into churches or building new churches in the colonies or wherever, but it wasn't like this resulted immediately in people in churches because it was all the non-church going colonists that were drawn out into the wilderness of these revivals. So could something in a 21st century model be happening now where because of digital aggregation and people online and things are finding or they're getting their Bible, they're having a Bible study group, they're meeting with something, but it's not happening under the umbrella of an institutional church or denomination?
That's always a possibility. Like, I mean, people think like I'm like have some like sort of like side prop bet on religion like dying in America. I don't.
Yeah.
Honestly, my market is religious people buy my books. Religious people pay me to come speak. Like I would like if religion got bigger. Like it would actually expand my market. If I wrote a book, Skye, called The Coming Religious Revival, and I even slapped together some graphs, it would sell 100,000 copies. But that's not what the data says right now. Like actually, my incentive structure is for religion to increase in America, as I talk about in the book. But like you can't look at the numbers, at least how we've tracked religion in America for 50 years, and see anything in the conventional metrics that points toward a conventional religious revival. Now that could be digital evangelism, right? Could be the next George Whitefield out in the out in the cornfields. It's on TikTok. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But unless and until I see churches start filling back up, like and I wrote this piece for Desert this week where I basically say, listen, if there's a revival happening in America, you wouldn't even need me to tell you about it. You'd feel it. You'd see it. You would know it. You'd hear hundreds of pastors telling stories of my church had 70 people for years and now we've got 120 people, you know, and the churches that are 1,000 or 5,000. And we hear pockets of stories like that, but 5 stories like that do not a revival make.
Yeah.
We would need to see hundreds and thousands of stories like that. So maybe you don't even need me right now to make this distinction.
I hear you saying 2 things. One possibility, although a far-fetched one possibility is we're seeing a new wineskins kind of thing where there's something happening, but it's just not showing up on the radar of institutional churches, maybe. The other thing I hear you saying is you, Ryan Burge, just have too much integrity to say there's a revival going on when you can't find the data to back it up and you're not going to be, no matter how much self-interest there may be involved, you have too much integrity to promote such a view.
I just can't. I want to lay my head down at night and go, I gave it my best shot to tell the truth is best. Like to me, like my peace of mind is worth more than selling 100,000 copies of a book. And my brand, not to like be marketing speak, my brand is to just tell the truth, good, bad, or indifferent. And if it makes you mad, okay. And if it makes you happy, okay. I really don't care. Like my job is just to describe the world the way it exists right now, not the way I want it to be, but the way it actually is. And this is as best as I can tell with all my expertise and methodological knowledge and all the surveys I look at, this is where we are right now. I could be wrong. Maybe I am wrong. Actually, in some ways, I hope I am wrong, but I just have to tell the truth of what I have.
Okay. Speaking of telling the truth, let's talk about the truth of your new book, The Vanishing Church. You and I have talked about a lot of the ideas that found their way into this book in prior conversations on the Skye Pod, here on the Holy Post podcast. You've written a lot about this stuff in your Substack channel, but the subtitle is How the Hollowing Out of Moderate Congregations is Hurting Democracy, Faith, and Us. I want to begin with this. How do you define a moderate congregation?
Thank you for starting with that. Now, Can I just tell you some prior titles of the book that got rejected?
I always love that. I have many in my own library of books. Yeah.
Yeah. The Death of Polite Religion and the Future of America.
Uh-huh.
That was the initial title that I pitched.
That's not bad.
I thought it was good,
Yeah.
but the people thought I was a little too harsh because, like, listen, I'm so geared towards, like, titling Substack articles, which have to be, like, bam, you know, like, they can't be subtle. They got to be, like, right on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one. One was going to be called The Big Church Sort, which is kind of like playing off Bill Bishop's The Big Sort, you know, like with a new angle on it. So that was one of them. And now this one got The Vanishing Church, how the hollowing out of moderate congregations. What do I mean by moderate? Here's what I mean by moderate. I do not mean where everyone's a moderate. What I mean by that is actually politically diverse congregations where the conservatives and the liberals balance out to moderate, right? And politically heterogeneous is not going to go on the title of a book.
Yeah.
Right. But that's really what I meant when it's saying moderate congregations is where you have people from left, right, and center in fairly equal proportions, you know, in a church representing every aspect of what the American political spectrum could look like. So moderate doesn't mean everyone's moderate. It just means we aggregate to moderate.
And you make the point in the book really clearly that you go back and look at the data from the 1980s, 40 years ago, evangelical congregations in particular were just as likely to have a Democrat in their pews as a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely not the case anymore. You mentioned the big sort. How much of this is just the result of the geographic sorting that we've seen in America, where whole communities are less politically diverse and people who vote red are going to red states and red cities and red communities, and blue people are going to blue states and blue communities, and therefore the churches within those communities look more politically one color?
Yeah. So the county I grew up in was Marion County, Illinois. My first election was 2000. It was 51-48, 51 Bush, 48 Gore. And now it's 80-20.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, that's not just sorting, by the way. That's also people changing their allegiance.
Yes.
There's no way it can be, because that county's too stagnant population-wise for it to just be sorting out. But I will say this, almost everyone I went to high school with and ended up getting, you know, a good degree or a graduate degree does not live in Marion County, Illinois anymore.
Right.
They've moved to St. Louis or Chicago or Nashville or somewhere else that's bluer for them. So I think it's a both and, right? I think it is sorting. Like, people are moving to places that are aligned with them politically. But I think also people are changing their politics where they are right now. And they'll say things like, well, I didn't move, the party moved. Mm-hmm. That's what you see a lot in rural America. Like, I used to be a Democrat and the Democratic Party went crazy on trans and gay and abortion and all these things. So therefore I had to become a Republican. So they're not even blaming themselves for sorting out. They're saying it's the parties that moved and they stayed the same. Now, measuring that, good luck with that, right? Like, what is liberal, what is conservative? I think we could all debate on that.
I hear a lot of that coming from people who were Republican, and they may be independent now, maybe Democratic, but they're like, the Republican Party since 2016 with MAGA and Trump has left me, and I haven't changed my convictions. And so there are people who argue the other direction for sure.
What's wild is the Republican Party used to be a free trade party, not anymore. Used to be an isolationist party, which was funny because Trump ran on isolationism and then it invaded a foreign country to extract their leader and then run that country somehow, which is the opposite of isolationism and falling into the same trap the Bush administration did, 20 years ago with Iraq. But hey, that's a whole different conversation. I think the problem is that people don't have coherent political worldviews. They don't have like, I'm a free trader, I'm an isolationist, I'm an interventionist, I'm a big government type. Like, they're really whoever leads their party, that's who they are, right? So Trump has completely remade the Republican Party. And all these people were like, yeah, man, tariffs are good. When 20 years ago, they would have hated the idea of tariffs because it restricts free trade, right? So I think this is something I've learned doing all the research that I do in religion and politics. A lot of the chattering class wants to believe that the average American has a coherent, consistent, thoughtful worldview on politics and religion. And I look at data all day long, and I feel like part of my job, I also say, like putting smoke in a box, like trying to make sense of people who don't want to be made sense of. Like, why people left church is a huge thing that I study, like in several projects that I'm in. And you know what the answer I come back to over and over again is we can find some like fuzzy areas where it seems to point to certain things, but most people could not articulate to you in a consistent way why they stopped going to church. Like, they didn't have that big huffy moment where like, well, the pastor said that gay people are going to hell, so I stood up and walked out, or, like, they don't have those like crystallizing like movie style moments. It's just life doesn't work that way. And yet we want it to work that way because it's easier for our minds to conceive of, when the reality is most people are more interested in the price of gas and who won the football game last night than like limited atonement. And yet, but theologians want to think everyone thinks like them, and political scientists want to think everyone thinks like him. And the reality is that, listen, we're weirdos. Like, I'm a weirdo. I think about religion all the time. Most people don't think about it at all. And I need to respect that, from the people I survey.
Okay. So getting back to the what is a moderate congregation thing. Yeah. Back in the 80s, a moderate congregation would have been a place where you have an equal chance of bumping into a person who votes Democrat or Republican in your churches. That's very much not the case anymore. Churches code very red or very blue now. And you argue that we got to get back to churches where people of all political persuasions are welcome. Here's my dilemma. I have had friends on the show, other people on the show or on the Skye pod talking about leading congregations right now. Some of them, I think their desire to be focused on the faith and on the gospel and on the mission is genuine and real. They would love not to have to talk about anything that codes political.
Yes.
And yet some of them are living in communities that are facing constant ICE raids. Some of them are seeing, we just saw this horrific shooting in Minneapolis, which is drawing out everyone's on all sides, crazy. Like, they no longer have an option. And if you get into a pulpit on Sunday and you say, listen, I have no idea what the right solution is to immigration policy, but I do know that all people, including immigrants, whether they're documented or not, are made in the image of God, and we as Christians are to show dignity. Like, some people are going to hear that, interpret it through a political lens, and get angry and either walk out of the church. So here's my question. You're saying we need more moderate congregations, but is that even possible anymore when American culture and American politics has become so polarized that a pastor can't do their job without being interpreted as political?
Well, it's interesting that you framed that in terms of leadership. Like, I would frame it the opposite direction. Wouldn't it be easier for a pastor to actually stand up in the pulpit and say things like that if they knew their congregation was going to be more politically diverse?
Yeah.
From left, right, and center. But I think like there's a collective action problem happening here. And I think that's kind of like the undertone of the book is we're in this you go first mentality. It's like a lot of people, and I even say this, I wrote the book for people like me who don't know, they want to go to church, but they can't find a church that doesn't make them want to jump off a cliff, right? Either left, right, or center, like where the pastor will say something that just, makes them really mad. Like, the problem with that though is everyone's staying on the sidelines going, man, I wish I could find a church of people like me. And then the guy down the road saying the exact same thing. And if y'all would just show up one Sunday to the same church, you'd look around and go, holy cow. Like, we actually created the church that we're looking for, but everyone else is going, hey, you go first. Like, you be the first one into the pool to like be the establishing this new thing that church is. And I hope if I can like overcome the collective action problem by saying, hey, let's all come at one time and let's go to these churches. And this is the key. As a guy who was a pastor for 18 years, I can tell you this. You know what makes me happier than anything else? When someone comes up to you after the sermon and goes, Ryan, I don't agree with everything you said there, but I'm glad you said it, and it gave me a lot to think about. Like, that's what pastors need, by the way. And they also need people in their congregation who trust them to take them on a journey of faith exploration.
Right.
That they will not get off the off-ramp as soon as they hear one thing they disagree with.
Right.
And maybe that's what pastors need to model too, by the way. Like, from the pulpit, say things like that. Like, I'm going to say something today that might make you mad. I don't want your first reaction to be, what church are we going to go to next? I need it to be, let's work through this as a community of faith, and we'll be better on the other side.
I agree, obviously, entirely. But your ability to get up in the pulpit and say that is only going to go as far as the people that you're shepherding know you and trust you.
Correct.
So Pastor Burge gets up in the pulpit and says something about human dignity, including of undocumented immigrants, something like that. And if I'm sitting in their pew and I'm like, oh, that chafes against my political preference or view, but I know that Ryan is deeply committed to his faith, and I know that he is trying to communicate to me what he believes Scripture and the Holy Spirit are saying about this issue. And I have to wrestle with the cognitive dissonance that's created in me because I trust him. But more often when people hear that, they go, oh, my pastor's gone woke.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Well, he's been marinating on the wrong cable news channel and not, they're not assuming you're adhering to scripture. And that goes the other way too.
Yes.
Obviously, when you say something, I don't know, it could be about being pro-life or a Christian view, traditional view of marriage or whatever, and someone might code you the other way and go like, oh, they're Fox News or they're MAGA or whatever it might be. So is it simply the case, like, are we in this predicament not because the church or its leadership has changed what it's doing, but because people are just way more formed in their views and loyalties by their media consumption, which is the church really in a position to challenge that?
It should be, but it's not. I want to say the church is still able to change hearts and minds, right? Like, that's the optimist in me. Like, I think any good sermon can make you from lost to found, right? From blind to being able to see. I wish that were true, but the reality is that we come into so many things with a preconceived notion of how we should think about these issues. And I mean, listen, I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, like, part of the reason I think I've had some success in my career is if I say something that makes the liberals in the audience mad right now, wait 5 minutes and I'll make sure say something that makes them happy. Like, I've always had this, I don't know, like, probably unhealthy ability to see both sides in almost every issue that comes. I mean, that's being a professor, by the way, because I always thought being a professor, my job was to balance the classroom. So if everyone there is like super liberal, my job is to come in as a conservative to like give the best argument for the other side. Like, it takes intellectual work to do that, though. And let's be honest, I don't want to do that intellectual work a whole lot, and neither do the people in the pews. But I think there's two things that pastors could really model. And one is humility, right? One of the most valuable things I ever heard a pastor say was he preached his whole sermon. You know, he was like, strident, and here's what, and he goes, I think this is what the scripture means. I just thought that was the coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
Like by saying like hedging a little bit at the right, like I'm trying my best to figure this out, but I could be completely wrong. There's so much power in that. But the other thing is integrity. Like, and by the way, you don't build integrity with your congregation in 3 months or 6 weeks.
Right.
Like, it takes years to build up a rapport and a relationship with people where they go, listen, I know Ryan took us on a weird track today, but I trust that he's taking us on a valid, honest, intellectual, theological journey on how to understand these issues. You have to build that up. When I first started ministry, the first thing I was taught was your first year, do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like hold your hand steady on the wheel and just show people that you're a person of reliability and character, like that you're going to do the job well, and then slowly steer the boat over time, but do it in an intellectually humble way with as much integrity as you can. I really don't think that we think too much about transparency as a leader, but I always got the best feedback when I was more honest with my congregation about my struggles. Like, because that makes you a human being, like a real person, and they can relate to you and be honest with you. And guess what? You being humble from the pulpit means the people being humble from the pews, and you being vulnerable from the pulpit leads to vulnerability from the pews. And really, isn't that what a church community is supposed to be, where you share your thoughts and dreams and fears and struggles? Like, but it has to start from the top, right? I mean, let's be honest here. Anytime I hear a pastor be so sure of himself, I think two things to myself. One, why am I not as sure as that dude is? And two, where can I find a new church? You know, like, I can't deal with surety. And I think a lot of people who aren't in church right now don't deal with surety. And that's kind of what the book was written to, people like me who want to go to church, but just can't deal with that, like, pound the pulpit guy who's so sure of himself.
That's actually a good transition into another part of the book I wanted to talk about. You have a section just on the evangelical tradition in America and what transformation it has seen in recent decades.
Yeah.
And as I was reading that section of the book, here's what I kept thinking. What we now call evangelicalism has really morphed into fundamentalism. And fundamentalism, I mean that certainty of belief that includes many non-essential Christian doctrines. It isn't just like, oh, I'm certain that Jesus rose from the dead. It's like, oh, I'm certain about my view of women in ministry. I'm certain about my view of bazillion other things. So it's certainty of belief, homogeneous congregations. We all have to agree on everything all the time. Condemnation of compromise. There's no room for diversity of thought. A threatening posture towards the culture or those who are outside, a defensive posture towards anything that's not us. And the irony is the neo-evangelical movement, which, you know, came post-World War II, Billy Graham, Carl Henry, it was created to combat fundamentalism. And now it's sort of become neo-fundamentalism because so much of evangelicalism is people want that certainty. They want that absolutism. They want that homogeneity where we all agree on how we vote. We all agree on everything about the culture all the time. I want to only be with people that are like me 100% of the time. Why do you think that shift happened?
Because the machinery was designed for it to happen.
What machinery?
The machinery of conservative religious belief, I think, always tends towards fundamentalism the more you let it go that direction, because it becomes an echo chamber of like, how far outright can I outright you? Like this goes back, okay, to go way deep into religious history, the Donatist controversy of like look at this. I read Tom Holland's Dominion. Go buy you a copy.
I
of
know,
Tom Holland's
that's a great book.
Ooh, it's fantastic. But he tells his story, the Donatist controversy, which I never heard of until I read Tom Holland. For those of you who don't know, basically what happened was the Catholic Church, there was this whole schism about who the real Catholics are and who the fake Catholics are. And there was a whole group of people who said that if you got baptized by a priest who was not a real Catholic priest, then you weren't a real Catholic. You weren't a real Christian. And so you had to be rebaptized by someone who wasn't an apostate, who hadn't. And guess what we do in a modern American religion now? The Donatist controversy over and over again, which is how pure can you possibly be? This is a fundamental fact of religion, of Western religion, is it constantly tries to purify itself. And unfortunately, in our context, that means continuing to go further and further to the right. And can I out-conservative you? There used to be some people in the tribe who would try to like steer the boat back toward the middle. But let's be honest, I'm not going to name names. We can all know them in our hearts and minds who I'm talking about. Why would you want to be part of a tribe that basically just lambasts you every day on how you're a liberal and you're weak-kneed and you're compromising and you're a moderate? Because that's not you. Listen, as someone who has a little bit of a public platform, the criticism hurts. And I can't imagine my platform was 10 times the size. I would retreat from that too, because you can't psychologically deal with that criticism, minute by minute for days and hours and years. So what's happened is like those moderating voices, you're seeing them leave the evangelical conversation because they can't put up with it anymore. And guess what you're left with? The Donatist controversy all over again, which is like, well, were you part of the SBC before such and so? And did your church actually give money to the cooperative program? Do you ever have Beth Moore material in your church? That's where we are right now. Is that same thing that was happening, 300 AD is happening in America today.
Okay, but backing up then to the 1980s again, and as you document really well in this book, a lot of evangelical churches were just as likely to have Democrats or Republicans in their pews. So I'm trying to get to what's going on. Is this a chicken and egg situation, or is there an actual sequence? So is it a case that America became more polarized politically? Our communities became more polarized politically. And therefore, if you're a church leader, you're a pastor, you're looking out at your community, your congregation, you're going, oh, wait a minute, these people are like way more rabid about their political views than they used to be. And I need to not alienate them, either need to toe the party line politically, or at least stay away from anything that would challenge them. And we just acquiesce. Like, I'm trying to get away from this idea that, well, back in the 1980s, pastors and churches did it right. And that's why their churches were healthier and less polarized. Or was it simply the fact that America was just healthier and less polarized, and the church benefited from that, but it wasn't actually doing any more formative discipleship work in the 1980s as it is now. It just benefited from a healthier America than we do now. And we're failing just as much in our discipleship as we were 40 years ago. It's just that America's a heck of a lot more polarized and unhealthy and nasty than it was. And we're just seeing it more clearly.
Yeah, that's so here, let me take that to another step of that. Okay. So among young people, alcohol consumption and cigarettes and marijuana consumption is at all-time lows. Like there's this data set called Monitoring the Future, and it asks high school seniors questions about things like that. Goes from 1976 to today. Like 85% of high school seniors in 1976 were smoking cigarettes, and now it's like 18%. Alcohol consumption has gone from 95% to 50%. Marijuana has gone from 75% to 38%. At the same time, teen pregnancy in America has dropped by 75% since the early 1990s. All while American religion has gone through the largest decline we've ever recorded in American history.
Right. So you can't say, well, the church has just done a great job.
Exactly right. It's like, oh, well, Christian culture won here, guys. And that's why we're not smoking, drinking, swearing, and having sex, right? No. The same thing here is like, was the church the cultivator of religious polarization, or is it sort of like lived downstream of like macro level forces that were happening, right? I think part of the problem that we're facing in America today is that we have a two-party system where the parties have to actively court certain parts of the voting bloc. And when the nuns started to rise, that created a problem for the two political parties. It's like, okay, wait, who's going to be the party of the atheists? It cannot be like Newt Gingrich is not going to go out and like talk to atheists about anything, right? Except how wrong they are. So the Republicans naturally, because they were already sort of the pro-life party and the, culturally conservative party, they were like pushing the nuns away. And the Democrats were like, well, if you're going to push them away, like we'll be happy to take them. But then that subconscious decision essentially caused like what we have today, which is the Republican Party is basically the party of Christianity, white Christianity almost overwhelmingly. And the Democrats have become the party of everyone who's not who I just said.
Right.
So, 45% of Harris voters were non-religious, but you've also got Black Protestants, you've got Hispanic Catholics, you've got Muslims, you got Jews, you got Buddhists, you got Hindus. So that they basically became by default the party of everybody else. And I think now the Democrats, and this is actually the big flaw in my book, I'll be the first to admit it, is the Democratic Party is no friend to even middle of the road Christians on issues of morality right now. Like, let's be clear about that. Kamala Harris saying we should allow gender transition procedures for people, which she said, by the way, you can't massage. She actually said that. And then you ask Democratic politicians, at what point would you want to restrict abortion? And they don't give you an answer. Mm-hmm. I get why my conservative evangelical friends look at the Democratic Party and go, why would I vote for those people? They're morally bankrupt. Because in some ways they don't have a moral compass. And the reason is because they're not catering to Christians' moral compass. They have to cater to all these other groups' moral compass, which is different. So I think that's the problem, is these parties have basically made it harder for a Christian to be a Democrat today than 30 years ago, when both parties on morality issues were, not that far apart.
Okay, so that we're about out of time, but that's going to lead to a bonus segment that I really want to record with you, because you have a section of the book where you talk about the fact that we're actually not as divided as the parties would make us believe when you get into the data. So stick around. We're going to have that bonus conversation. If you're a Holy Post Plus subscriber, you're going to be able to get that. If you're not a Holy Post Plus subscriber, I don't know why you're waiting. Go to holypost.com, sign up. But you should also check out Ryan's new book, The Vanishing Church, How the Hollowing Out of Moderate Congregations is Hurting Democracy, Faith, and Us. You can get that obviously wherever books are sold, and check him out on Substack. Ryan, you're going to stick around. We're going to do this bonus conversation, but thanks for being back with us.
Always a pleasure, Skye.
Hey, make a sacrifice to the algorithm gods and like and subscribe to this video and our content. It's the only way they will honor us on YouTube.